Thanks for joining us for this special extension of Flight School Blast Off, or as we like to call it, the Mission Debrief. For the next 30 minutes, authorities from Flight School will be answering student questions. The questions will come from Aerospace Science students from Westfield High School in Fairfax County, Virginia, that have joined us here at the Air and Space Museum's Uvar Hazy Center, and from students across the nation via email. The answers will be provided by Roger Launius, the senior curator at the National Air and Space Museum's Space History Division, Valerie Neal, a curator with the National Air and Space Museum's Space History Division, and William Reedy, a former NASA astronaut who flew on 3 Space Shuttle missions. So, let's begin. Our first question. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Justin. I was wondering, what's the plans for the Orion missions?
Well, there are a lot of possibilities for Orion, and that's the spacecraft that's now being developed by NASA that will replace the Shuttle. It, with the Ares 1 rocket, is a part of the Constellation program, and it's going to be the human launcher that's going to take the astronauts into Earth orbit initially. Ultimately, NASA hopes to build a new launcher beyond Ares 1 that will take those astronauts again on the Orion spacecraft to the moon.
All right, how about another question today? Oh, you have another question?
No.
Okay, thank you. Who's next in line? We have a lot of students here today who are excited to ask questions.
Hi, my name is Mario. My question is, since it seems that interest in spaceflight has gone down since the Apollo missions, do you think a new discovery on the moon or on Mars would spark the same, if not more, interest than there was during the 1960s?
I'm not sure that interest in space missions has gone down. When I look at people in the museum every day, when I go out talking to people, it seems like there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm out there for space exploration. Looking at the discoveries coming from the Hubble Space Telescope, from the Mars Pathfinder and the Mars rovers, any spacecraft that goes out to a new world generates tremendous excitement. And I think that will be true if people go out to those new worlds also.
All right, thank you. All right, and we have an email question here, and this is for William Reedy. It comes from Erica Rode, a 6th grader, and she asks, when you went into the space program, was it hard? I mean, did you struggle? Was it fun? And last of all, were you ever afraid?
Oh boy, all the above. I've got a 6th grader at home. Peter is in 6th grade at St. Charles School in Arlington, and you know, he asked me the same kind of questions, and you know, it's remarkable. I don't think being in school has changed very much. You still struggle day to day to get the homework done, to maintain a balance between athletics and school and interests, but I think I always had very good mentors, not only my parents, but also the teachers in school that kind of kept me on track when I kind of got off the beam a little bit.
And I think she's also wondering, were you afraid when you were up in space?
Oh gosh, well, you know, if you think about what's involved, that incredible amount of energy that's unleashed when you launch into space, I mean, it really focuses your mind on how many people have to do their jobs perfectly in order for the mission to be successful. And I think as a flight crew member, what happens is you spend most of your time training for every last little eventuality, and so you feel very confident, not only in yourself and your skills, you also feel very confident in the hardware and the team that has put all this together and is helping you in the launch control and the mission control. So I think you're actually so focused and so busy that there really isn't time to be afraid.
All right, next question.
All right, I'm Luke, and I've heard that NASA has plans to send a manned spaceflight to Mars. What would they hope to accomplish by this type of mission?
Great question, Luke. Who wants to take that? Okay.
Boy.
Mr. Reedy?
Well, first of all, I think that is just so exciting, but I think the first steps are space station. We're going to learn to operate off of this planet for months and months at a time. That's the first stepping stone. The next one is to go back to the moon. Space station's a couple hours from home, if you think about it, if you could drive straight up. The moon is a couple days away from home, but Mars is hundreds and hundreds of days away. And so the idea is we learn how to live off of the planet Earth on the moon that's relatively close by, where we can use the kind of propulsion technology that we have today and learn the moon is also a very interesting scientific destination. After all, it's in Earth orbit. It stares at the Earth most of the time. It's a fantastic platform to put telescopes and scientific instruments, and who knows, maybe we'll generate electrical energy on the moon and beam it back to the Earth. You know, all kinds of things. Well, that'll be the next step, and then over the decades that follow, then we'll be able to invent the new propulsion technology so that instead of hundreds and hundreds of days to Mars, maybe it takes several weeks or maybe a couple months. And that's, I think, just exciting, and you know, that's the future that you all are going to be taking part of.
That is exciting. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Steven, and I'm wondering if I want to become an astronaut, what kind of career paths do I need to take?
Oh.
Mr. Lanius?
I can certainly take that, but we may want to have the astronaut say something too. Obviously, study of science and math and technical subjects, the so-called hard sciences, that is the ticket to become an astronaut. And pursuing that through the bachelor's level, maybe to higher levels beyond that, a master's or a PhD, is the answer to that. Short term, study those subjects in high school. Science and math and the various opportunities that exist along those lines are very important. But not everybody that works for NASA, not everybody that's involved in the space program are astronauts. And it's important to understand that there is a place for people with a broad background of skills and capabilities beyond being in the spacecraft itself. Would you like to say something?
Well, I guess I agree with everything that Roger said. It's only a small number of people that actually get to be astronauts, but I think all of us, you know, whether we're flying in space or not, you know, are very passionate about the space program and working on it and being part of that team. I mean, one of the proudest days I had was when I got to put my NASA name tag on. You know, the first day I went to work for NASA. I mean, you know, to be part of something like that. Math and science, obviously, but the other thing is, you know, follow your passions. That's where you're going to excel. If it leads that way, great, you know, so much the better.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming up. And we have a question for Valerie Neal, an email question. After we stop using the space shuttles, what will astronauts use to get to space? That's from Marcus Anderson. He's in 6th grade.
Well, the Orion spacecraft is the follow-on spacecraft to the Space Shuttle, and it's kind of a Back to the Future spacecraft. It looks a lot like the old Apollo spacecraft, only twice as large. It will hold 6 people instead of 3. It will be launched on the top of a rocket, and it will land under parachutes, and will either land on land or in water. That's still being debated. The craft under it, the launch vehicle, will have some holdover technology from the shuttle era, but the human spacecraft itself, the cone on top, is going to look a lot like the Apollo spacecraft that went to the moon.
That's all right. We have another question. What's your name?
I'm Cameron.
Cameron, what's your question?
I had a question about how is flying a space shuttle different from flying a normal airplane?
Let's let the expert answer that one.
You ought to take this.
Who actually did it?
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. You look at the Enterprise there, and it really does look like a modern fighter-type aircraft. It's got a big delta wing and everything. Of course, the engines that are on it are only used for ascent.
To go up?
Only to go up. When you do the deorbit burn, you're coasting the entire way home. So halfway around the world, about 12,000 miles from the landing point, when you do the deorbit burn, the rest of the time you're slowing down, you're braking, using the friction with the atmosphere to slow the vehicle down until finally you arrive 10 miles up above the landing site, and you start this very steep 20-degree dive, and of course still with no engines. So it's really about 10 times as steep as a normal airplane, of course no engines, and about twice as fast. And you do that until you get to about 1,500 feet, and then you pull the nose up, and of course as soon as you do that, airspeed starts to decrease very rapidly, you're decelerating. You throw the landing gear down at the very last minute because you don't want any more drag than you have to, but then again, I mean, you're not going around because you don't have any engines, so you're going to land. And it flies very much like a modern fighter. So here's something that weighs 100 tons that flies just as nimbly as a modern jet fighter does.
Well, that sounds like a rush, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Next question today. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Kat.
What's your question, Kat?
And I was wondering, is it really hard working in the big, bulky spacesuits? And if it is NASA making any improvements to the suit to make it more mobile and easier to work with?
Well, there's two of you could answer that. Well, no, is that to you, Mr. Reedy?
Well, yes and yes. Yes, it really is. It's a lot of work. This suit is inflated. You know, that's the atmosphere that you take with you. It's 100% oxygen. It's a little bit less than 5 pounds per square inch. So it's this inflatable balloon, and you think, well, it's weightless up there. Well, you're inside the suit, and if I want to close my hand, I'm working against the suit. If I want to open my hand, I'm working against the suit. If I want to move my arms. And even though you're in this big fishbowl kind of helmet, really and truly, the visibility down here is limited, and my ability to move my shoulders and arms and everything. So when you see astronauts, typically they're doing things right here. And they have the other astronaut that works the robot arm position them so that they can do all their work right here, so it minimizes the amount of effort. And I'll tell you, after working with those gloves on for a while, your forearms just ache. I mean, screaming in pain. And so you have a conditioning program before you go fly. You're always working on grip strength, in particular forearm strength. The rest of your body doesn't seem to be too involved in what you're doing in terms of assembly and things like that in that suit. The one thing that is nice, though, is when you are weightless, that suit doesn't weigh anything. So you're not having to carry that around with you, and that's kind of nice.
All right. Thank you for your question. All right, who's next? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Anthony. Do you have any future plans of colonizing the moon? And if so, what are the benefits of it?
There are lots of plans to go to the moon and ultimately to stay there. NASA's current effort is to take the Orion spacecraft to go to the moon, and not just to go on sorties or camping trips like we did with Apollo, but to go and spend a significant amount of time and ultimately to create a base that will be there, a research station that we can cycle people in and out. And we really do envision this as something that's going to happen in the not too distant future. We're going to see this in the next, hopefully, 15 years or so, where we'll have a base there where people will be learning more about the moon, about the solar system, using it for other scientific purposes, and most importantly, learning how to engage in long duration, and I mean really long duration, multiples of years space program efforts.
Could I ask, would that be like the research stations in Antarctica?
That's a model that a lot of people have used. We've got these research stations in Antarctica that are often multinational in focus, and have been down there for many, many years now. People go in and out of them, and they spend a tour there and they come back. That's exactly the kind of model that we're probably going to see on the moon.
Thank you for being here. All right. We have another question here from our group.
Hi, Kathy, it's so good to see you here. How are you doing? This is the real spaceman. Let me shake your hand.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Rocket, of course, you remember.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive us.
I was just wondering, what about that poor Matt he's left down there at Kennedy? Is there anything we can do for him?
Why don't we go and get him?
Yes.
Oh, good idea. Good idea.
Oh, Rocket right down there.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rocket. Yes, thank you for taking care of us.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. He means well. He means well. Dr. Rocket, goodbye. All right, what's your question?
I'm Vince.
Okay, Vince.
Okay, some people believe that we did really not go to the moon because in photographs there are some questionable shadows, lacks of stars, and wind blowing the flag. How do you explain this?
Oh my goodness, this is
really
a great
happen?
question.
Yeah.
We absolutely, positively did go to the moon. There is no question about it, and anybody who says otherwise is just not informed or is just not terribly bright. There are so many ways to explain those particular issues that people talk about. The anomalies in photographs, the flag waving on the moon. Oh, by the way, when you look at that flag waving on the moon in the imagery, what you will see is the astronaut has either got his hand on the staff and has been moving it, or has just completed moving it and it's moving as a result of that. So anyone who says otherwise is just not really very well informed. And let me give you the #1 reason why it's so easy to believe that we did indeed go to the moon. The Soviet Union, which was our rival in the Cold War, a very serious rival and had a very serious capability to fly in space, would have loved to embarrass us. And if they had caught us in that kind of lie, can you imagine what kind of noise they would have made about it? They never said a word. They knew we went. And
are you a believer?
We did.
The number two reason, the #2 reason is too that out of the 100,000 people who were working in the space program at the time, that many people could not have kept a secret this long.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. All right. How about another question? What's your name?
My name's Gavin.
Okay, Gavin.
And I wanted to know if someday it'd be possible that we could have a commercial spaceflight industry.
Commercial spaceflight industry. Valerie, any thoughts on that?
Well, the origins of a commercial spaceflight industry are happening right now. There are a number of small startup companies who are working very hard to develop innovative craft to go into, at least go into space and eventually to go into orbit. And that is their whole reason for existence, is to be able to launch that spaceflight industry. That would then make it possible truly for passengers to go into space for the price of a ticket. I think we're not too many years away from that.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we have another email question, and this is for William Reedy. What do you do with the trash you take into space?
We bring it home. We compact it and we bring it all home.
All right, thank you. How about a question? What's your question and what's your name?
Hi, my name's Emily, and my question is, why is NASA steering away from using spacecrafts that are reusable and reverting back to spacecrafts that are only good for one mission?
Well, I'm the shuttle commander, and let me tell you why we're doing that. If you look at what the shuttle was designed for, it was designed to get to and from Earth orbit. It was designed to assemble things in space, like the space station, deliver large payloads, and it's done that mission magnificently over time. If we want to go to the moon, at that point, wings and a tail are added weight that you don't need. And so you need a different kind of spacecraft in order to do lunar exploration. You need another kind of spacecraft then to go beyond the moon and to Mars. So it's just part of evolution, and it's kind of how aircraft have evolved to particular missions. They don't all look the same. They may all fly in the same year, but they are all tailored to particular missions. That's the reason why we're doing a capsule here for the Orion, and that's why the shuttle, after the space station assembly is complete and it's on solid footing, that will retire the space shuttles. Now, I have a very sentimental spot for the space shuttle. It's been a magnificent vehicle. It's gone way beyond anybody's expectations in terms of the things that it's been able to do. But it's just like having a favorite aircraft in this museum. It occupied its particular niche in time and did its mission particularly well, and then you move on to the next thing. You continue to evolve.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm James. My question was, what are the procedures for a missed approach back to Earth?
Oh, that's a
What
good
are the
one.
procedures for a missed approach?
A missed approach. Well, we call it a wave off, and I hate to say it. I mean, if there are no NASA officials watching, we love wave off days, and you know why? Because we're already packed up and ready to come home. The mission has been completed. You're packed up, everything's stowed, you're ready to come home, you're in your suits, you go through the countdown. So you have kind of a nice opportunity to review all your procedures, and then let's say the weather in Florida is just a little bit too iffy to commit to landing. Well, then you back out of that. We call it a wave off, and we back out of that checklist. And then you know what you get to do? You get to take photographs of the Earth. You get to catch up on all those things that you were so busy during the mission. I mean, time up there is so precious that every last minute is programmed during the flight, but the wave-off days aren't. And so what happens is, before you commit to do the deorbit burn, that's when you just elect to stay in orbit for another day. Another day turns out to be 16 orbits, an hour and a half per orbit. And then you try again. Sometimes you don't land the next day either. And we typically carry 2 or 3 days of additional propellants and food and everything else, so that you have that available as a safety cushion.
It's kind of like a snow day in high school. Thank you. All right. Who's next? Hi.
Hi. I am Charlie Keith.
Hi, Charlie.
And I was wondering, how much money is going to the space program?
A minuscule amount. The reality is it's about 17 billion and change this year. Now that sounds like a lot of money, and it is for you or me, but in the context of what we spend as a nation for the things that we think are important nationally and for the federal budget, it's minuscule. It's less than 1/6 of 1% of the federal budget at this point in time. So it's a modest, very modest investment in the future, and one that I think most of us should be willing to make. Less than a penny out of every dollar is spent on space flight.
Well, the other thing is, it's interesting because none of that money is spent up in space.
Where's it spent?
It's all spent here on this planet, right? I mean, this is kind of an engine that drives a very highly technical kind of industry, the aerospace industry. Aerospace industry right now has a positive balance of payments of somewhere around $55 billion a year that's coming into the United States as a result of that industry. And I think, you know, in the entire United States, there are only about 600,000 people that work in aerospace. So you can see that little teeny tiny percent that goes to our nation's space program gets multiplied and multiplied and multiplied.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Thanks.
All right. Who's next today? Hi.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
Ashley?
Yes.
What's your question?
I was wondering if we will be able to create a permanent space station that will be able to sustain many people as well as orbit to other planets.
All right. Who wants to take that?
Well, Valerie may have something to say about this as well. We are in the process of building a space station like that at this point in time, and we're getting close to being pretty much done with it. It's now got a permanent crew of 3 people aboard. We're going to expand that in the next few years to a larger crew, probably 6 people initially, and who knows beyond that. And it's going to be up there for a number of years beyond. We don't know how long, but it's now been up there with a crew aboard since 2001, and we anticipate that that's going to be the case for probably another decade or more.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, bye, Ashley. Hi.
Hi there.
What's your name?
My name is Chris.
All right, Chris.
And I was just wondering, how important to NASA is developing new kinds of energy and researching different kinds of fuels?
Roger, would you like to take that?
Sure, I can talk to that. The issues associated with energy development, and it's not just the issue of energy that we can use here on this planet, but it's also energy that will make it more effective and reliable and safe for us to fly into and through space. And so there's a lot of efforts to try to come up with new propulsion technologies, new chemicals, new systems that will enable us to do that. That will have some spillover effect and some spin-off capability to the private sector. And things like solar energy that is becoming much talked about on Earth today as a possible fill-in for the kinds of electrical power that we currently have. A lot of that technology was built in the context of the space program so that we could power spacecraft in Earth orbit that had a spin-off and a spillover capability for things that are happening here amongst us right now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have an email question now, and this is for Valerie. It's from Fabiola Encinas, grade 6, writes, how close are we to having an astronaut land on Mars?
Not close. Not close. We have a lot of work to do in Earth orbit and on the Moon before we send people to Mars. But the estimates I've heard are that if the near-term program goes well and we really form a commitment that we want to go to Mars, that it could happen maybe 2035 to 2050 in that time frame. It probably could actually happen a lot sooner if that were our highest priority. There's nothing magic about sending an astronaut to Mars. It's really more a matter of deciding that that's our #1 priority and that we want to spend however much money it would take to do it.
So these high school students would be maybe 40, 45 when it happened. All
They'd
right.
be just the right age to go, probably.
That's right, all right. And what is your name? What's your question?
My name's Adam, and I was wondering, you know the Spaceship One by Burt Rutan, if NASA had taken any innovations from the way he did it, and they were using it to make space travel more available to average people.
Oh, wow. Great question. I was in St. Louis in 1996 when the X Prize was first kicked off. And I was there with Burt Rutan, and we talked about that project and how exciting it would be. It turns out that they used a lot of NASA technology to design the Spaceship One. If you look at the displays, the controls, the ability to do structural analysis, the composite materials, an awful lot of that was derived from NASA technologies. And the other thing is, it's not widely known, is NASA put a payload on Spaceship One when it was doing its flying. So we've actually been a partner with Burt Rutan for quite some time. It just probably didn't get the exposure that maybe it should have.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? What's your name?
My name's Kyle. And if necessary, how do you abort a mission after liftoff?
Okay. How do you abort a mission after liftoff? First of all, if you were to have an engine failure, you would either have to return to the Kennedy Space Center, the launch site, return to launch site Abort, or if you were going a little bit faster, you would actually go all the way across the Atlantic and land in Spain, and that's a transatlantic abort. And we have guidance programs in the computer that basically you select whichever abort mode you need, and then you invoke that computer mode, and then you take the steering, and then it's kind of like a normal landing.
All right, thank you. We have time for one last question. What is your name and what's your question?
Jared.
Jared?
What effect does zero gravity have on your body after a long period of time?
Wow. Well, first of all, for a short period of time, it is the most magnificent feeling you can imagine, being weightless. And you couple that together with being able to look down on our planet, and it's just beautiful. All the different colors that you see, this tiny little thin veneer of an atmosphere, all the stars and everything else, it's incredible. Your body gets very lazy, though, very quickly. You're an athlete, you know that. I mean, if you're not working out all the time, what happens? Okay, so your body is no longer acclimated to 1G. So when you come back, you feel very heavy. Your heart has to compensate for the fact that the blood is now, rushing to your extremities, which it hadn't been doing for the last couple weeks because gravity wasn't pulling the fluids down, because there is really no down and no up. So your body gets a little bit lazy. You have to compensate for that, and we also have to drink a lot of fluids because typically when you get up there, you lose a lot of fluid.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we have time for one more question. Oh, great! Come on up. What is your name, please?
I'm Luce, and I was wondering why, out of all the planets in our solar system, why is Mars the most focused planet on to explore?
Mr. Linus?
Yes, indeed. Mars is one of those places where we thought we would find a location that would be a little bit like Earth. And for many, many years before the space age, we had a sense that there was probably some sort of an atmosphere there, that there probably was some form of life that might have been there. Not necessarily little green men, but maybe some form of plant life, maybe microbial life or things of that nature. And so we were very excited about that, finding something that's kind of like us. And when we went there over and over and over again, what we found is that it's a planet that's immensely fascinating, but it's certainly not like Earth. Maybe it was more so in the past, and the current effort at NASA is to understand how Mars was once a watery planet and may have well had life at that time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it looks like we are out of time. With that, thanks to our panel of space experts for being here today, and to the students here at the Abort Haji Center, and those that emailed in their questions. And of course, thank you for watching on the internet. For Flight School Blast Off, I'm Kate Sullivan.